Honorable Professor Abshar Alam Sahab, Vice Chancellor, Jamia Hamdard, Professor Furqan Qamar Sahab, Faculty of Management Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia, former Vice Chancellor, Rajasthan University, and having been member of the Planning Commission and other bodies, Professor Khair, who has done this very elaborate hard work, Professor Madhu from Dr. Zakir Hussain College, earlier Delhi College, the dignitaries sitting in this hall. It is my privilege to say a few words on this very important publication of the NIOS. And I think NIOS has always been doing this kind of work, contributing to the corpus of knowledge in the country, especially in the arena of minorities, particularly Muslims. So while Furqan Qamar Sahib is speaking and passing on a note of caution to the IOS that this is not perhaps a suitable time to go for this kind of survey, hats off to IOS that without caring about the kind of wind which is blowing in the country in the past or the present, they continue to work sincerely and dedicatedly, and their work has always been appreciated by all quarters in the society, nationally and internationally. And therefore, on this occasion, I would like to congratulate IOS for having taken this very big work, very challenging work. Initially, for me also, looking at the size of the book, it seems to be just unaccomplishable work, but they have done it. Great work done. I want to congratulate Naaz Khair Sahiba and the RTI activist also, Salim Sahab, for carrying out this work. I have a little, a few observations, very little views on this book. Is such a voluminous book. It wants time and labor to study this book and come out with the comments. But I do agree that this is a stupendous task to collect data, having heard Salim Saab and her also, which in most organizations does not exist in the form of this study required. So this is a kind of non-existent data. Therefore, this is a pioneering work, a kind of directory of the Muslim educational institution available for the first time in the country. So it's a very great work having been accomplished, especially the struggle made through the ITI applications, though they did not bear much fruit initially, but later on you got something done with the help of RTI activity. Thanks for your patience and persistence. So it is definitely a daunting and commendable work. This work did inform us how a well-conceived tool in the hands of citizens to force responsible governance and administration has been rendered substantially ineffective by the corrupt politicians and bureaucrats, and a progressive instrument of right of citizens has been allowed to operate in debility, very weak position. The ITI Act, such a big, this ITI Act was praised across the world and is one of the very important instrument of democracy. But this has been, in fact, made very weak now at present. Though the RTI present, the research, your work, your persistence, they not share with you the data, but because of the pressure, consistent pressure you exerted on various organizations, especially I would mention the NCMI, they were able to upload all their details on their website, bring it to the public domain, and it had twin benefits. You got the data, but more importantly to me is that you made the entire website of the NCMI, which was defunct for quite some time, for many years. You made it functional, made it alive. Now other researchers, other stakeholders can also make use of this website. So this is your contribution. Otherwise, had you not built a pressure on them, the data would have remained dormant, and nobody would have taken advantage of that data. So this is I think the twin benefit because of your research activity. A significant contribution of this study is that it has made the concern known with a good degree of authenticity that despite Muslims being economically marginalized, now this study has made it very, very prominently pronounced in the country. You say Muslims are economically backward, they don't participate in education. They not only participate in education, they also contribute in education of the countrymen. So that has been made with a good degree of authenticity that despite Muslims being economically marginalized, they are better off sections have not remained behind. Others in making investment in the field of education for the Indian people at their own volition. There is no pressure on them. At their own volition, they have been taking initiatives and at their own initiative. And in most of the cases, this initiative is driven by service to the nation motive. So no profit motive is behind. Service to the nation motive is behind setting up these institutions by the minority institution, not by any commercial motive or commercial interest. So this is my observation that this study has been able to establish this fact. Look, this is the contribution of Muslims, so don't criticize them that they don't participate, they don't do anything. They are participating very significantly in nation building. This is a very important outcome of this study, if people want to take note of this. Moreover, the study also suggests that this is only a conservative reflection of the Muslims being aware of the value of education and their dedication to the cause of nation building. They are aware. But don't think that this is the only contribution of Muslims in the nation building, in the task of nation building. It is much more than that. Because of various limitations of this study, it is reflecting a limited part of their contribution. Okay? It is much beyond the confines of this volume. Because of the constraints, only a limited data have been retrieved and presented before the nation. Muslims' contribution is much wider in terms of number and richer quality of education of Indian citizens. I would like to give an example which was given by the Vice Chancellor also. A private university established in Meghalaya barely 12 years ago, University of Science and Technology Meghalaya, set up by an educated philanthropist, entrepreneur, offers education at UG, PG, PhD level, and more than 7,000 students are studying. And what is the status of this private university set up by a Muslim? That is to be seen by all. A predominant majority of these students coming to this university are tribals and non-Muslims. Service to the nation. In the area where northeastern part of the country, where people are underserved as far as education is concerned, they are doing the job. Not only this. So for quality of education, this university is considered to be the best in Northeast, equally both by the private people as well as by the governments. And what is the national reckoning about this university? In the national reckoning, this university figures among the top 150 to 200 private universities. It's a very big figure. Among the top 150 to 200 universities, it means that they are doing pretty good job. High quality education is important. And number two, this is NIRF ranking, Government of India ranking. This is not a private ranking. And number two, the NAAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council of India, that is again a government body. They have granted them a grade in the latest evaluation of the university. So unfortunately, this university is, from the media, is the target of all kinds of politicking by the Chief Minister. And despite that unfavorable environment in Assam. They are working in Meghalaya, but most of the students are coming from Assam. Recently, I happen to be the member of the board of governors of that university. So recently, they have been given full 150 MBBS seats, despite all these things, because of the kind of infrastructure, dedication, availability of the hospital, multi-special, everything is there. So they fulfill all the conditions. So their application was approved by all bodies, and they have already started admission in this unfavorable environment in MBBS course also. And by the vice chancellor was telling me the other day, on an average, 150 applications are coming per day for MBBS course. They are so popular in the Northeast. So this is just an example of the contribution of Muslims in the national development, particularly to the marginalized groups, Adivasis, Northeast people, tribals, of course Muslims, but the majority of these students are from the other groups. If you look at the trend of establishment of educational institutions from the book by Muslims during the 3 decades, 1986, 2016, in comparison with pre-1986 period, it is found that Muslims' entrepreneurial and philanthropic interests in the field of education is consistently rising. This is a very important observation made in this book. In the field of education is rising despite changing socio-political conditions and pressures. This should be borne in mind. There is a fourfold increase, as mentioned by other speakers also, in the number of their institution in the post-1986 period. I believe that the National Education Policy 1986, which was a very, very important policy brought out in the long gap after 1968, the establishment of NCMEI 1992, they both have played a positive role in encouraging Muslims to set up their own educational institutions. Earlier, the encouragement was there. At present, that might not be there. But this is the outcome of these two policies, 1986 and the NCMI. NCMI was also a part of the National Education Policy Commitment. It was set up in 1992, as was mentioned there. Earlier, as recorded in the National Education Policy 1986 Review Committee report of 1990, and reflected in the revised National Education Policy 1992, and noted in the Sachar Committee report of 2006 also, the applications of a large number of minority education institutions for their recognition and for obtaining minority character certificate were kept pending for decades together, as somebody pointed out just now also. But this practice is there for the last decade, many decades. But despite that, they have been able to set up so many institutions. Unfortunately, during the last 1 decade, the rate of disposal of application by the NCMI has drastically come down as per my personal reports, unfortunately. Another very important observation, the RTI journey provides an additional information for readers. It reveals how a very progressive, bold step towards the safeguarding of the citizens' rights for information is now being scuttled, and how citizens are being deprived of this right. And this, everybody is not as persistent as you are. So by and large, the people are being deprived of the information, which is their right, which is the citizens' right under the RTI Act. And therefore, they are obstructing disposal of justice, administration disposal of justice. If you don't have the information, you can't fight out on the basis of the information. Your strength is gone. Now, after having said all these things, I would like to make a few suggestions, if you permit me a few minutes. Not in this volume, but in the next volume, certainly, as pointed out by Furqan Qamar Sahab, this should be a continuing kind of activity. So my feeling is that the justification for cut-off year of 1986, as given in the book, for this study does not seem to be too plausible for me. I mean, I don't consider it plausible. Maybe Others may agree with that argument given by the writer. A more academically sound and valid justification could have been given rather than saying that the fundamentalism among Muslims increased in 1986 and therefore this study. I don't, therefore this cutoff date. I'll come back to that point later on. The promulgation of 1986 policy, national education policy, which for the first time, now this is a very important observation. 1986 policy, education policy, for the first time recognized minorities as an important section of population of the country, which are lagging behind others in education. Earlier policies didn't mention like that. And therefore it said that they need special added state attention to address their educational backwardness and encouraged educational initiatives by philanthropists, and also could have been stronger justification. I mean, for me, this could have been a stronger justification, because that was the year from where the government encouraged, the policy encouraged. In fact, in 1992 revision of the policy, this point was more heavily and categorically identified for backward educationally backward minorities, that is Muslims. There were two educationally backward minorities in the country earlier, Neo-Buddhists and Muslims. But because of the various policies of reservation, etc., Neo-Buddhists rose very fast, and they didn't remain anymore educationally backward minority. The educationally backward minority as of date in the country is Muslims. So the 1986 policy, 1992 policy, both are very important milestones in the educational development of minorities. That could have been the cutoff year. Instead of saying post-Shabano phase is considered as a dark period for Muslims of the country, as Muslim fundamentalists had emerged stronger following the enactment of the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Divorce Act 1986, which overturned the Supreme Court judgment 1985, unquote. I've taken this quote from the book. Now, it is a very subjective observation. How can we say that because of this act of 1986, fundamentalism was on the sway in the country, and therefore this is the dividing line, number one. Number two, what is the logic behind? Say, for example, is highly contradictory, self-contradictory. The moment we say that fundamentalism was on the rise after 1986 among the Muslims, fundamentalists don't talk about modern education. It's highly contradictory. So this could have been, that's why I feel that primarily this could not have been there. There was no need, because you are giving justification, that's why it is there. Otherwise, I don't think that this point should have been there. There was no need. So there is no relationship between fundamentalism and establishment of new institutions in a larger number, larger proportion by Muslims. I mean, this is my observation. Number two, the objective of the study stated to be to make a full assessment, again quoted, a full assessment of the contribution of Muslims in the field of education, page 1. Now, it is not clear whether the presumption is that these educational institutions have contributed in improving educational institutions. The presumption is that these educational institutions have contributed in improving educational status of Muslims or not. So there is no talk about that. Muslim educational status has improved, not. It talks about contribution in general. I'm coming to the point later. The purpose of facilitating establishment and administration of minority education institution is, as given in the Constitution of India, to help minorities impart education to their communities and of their choice, education of their choice. Of course, while doing so, their effort adds to the efforts of the state, of the government. Whatever they do, it adds up to their efforts, and therefore it contributes to the national development. But primarily it starts with the community, because the Constitution permits that and philanthropic efforts start from their own community. So if you are talking about Muslim education institutions, what has been the status of education of Muslims after having seen development of so many educational institutions by them? Secondly, another important observation is that, secondly, full assessment of contribution, this quote unquote, full assessment of contribution demands many parameters to be explored, like enrollments, pass outs, quality of results, nature of courses, communities enrollment in minority education institutions, etc. So, assessment, how assessment has been done? Merely by compiling a list of educations does not inform us about the assessment. It's not an assessment. Number two, contribution should have been more clearly spelled out and defined in beginning. What do you mean by contribution? Setting up of institution or enhancing enrollments, providing quality education. What is contribution? What do we understand? Similarly, the full assessment should have been elaborated, and the basis of full assessment used in this book should have been spelled out very clearly. Another very small point is that the government institutions' approach for getting data, including NEPA, AICT, NCMI, and other institutions, have been reported. Then they were approached. Yes, a lot of work has been done. But as far as the AICT is concerned, this is, or UGC is concerned, these are two regulatory bodies. There are almost 22 regulatory bodies in the country which are granting approval to different kinds of professional courses in the country. For example, I take the example of NCT, where I was the chairman for some time. During my time in 2008-11, I realized that around 300 minority Muslim institutions were set up as teacher education institutions. There are a large number of Muslim teacher education institutions in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. Now, we have not touched all those 20 odd regulatory bodies. You could have gathered more data, but in the second edition, you could go for collecting data from them also. I think this is the last one. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. Yeah, for every study, there is a theoretical background and a reference to the work done in the direction of the study, which provides the direction to the study for a better understanding of the study by the readers and its appreciation, its contribution to the corpus of knowledge. Now, I think I could not find a theoretical background having been given. What do we mean by madarsa? What is a madarsa? What is a registered madarsa? What do you mean by minority? What do you mean by contribution, assessment, etc., etc.? But there are so many things. So theoretical background for any study is a must. Similarly, some references, other works which have been done so far. For example, way back in 1986, 85, in Aligarh, Center for Promotion of Science was set up. Now, the very first thing which they did was that in 1986, they prepared a list of madrasas. A complete directory of 2,890 madrasas in India were produced by them, and that is being updated. The center is still working. Similar other sources are there. So, what I'm saying that, I mean, this is not the fault of the researchers, because the constraint of time, constraint of money, that is also important. Constraint of funds, I think she could not do it more comprehensively, but with limited time, with limited resources, with all kinds of obstructions and limitations and challenges, whatever has been done, it is a great work, great contribution. Thank you very much.